Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are getting ready to get started. So I'm Eric. I have Amit with me. How are you doing, Amit, this evening?
Absolutely great. Looking forward to the conversations.
Sounds good. I'm on Central Time Zone. I'm in Austin. Amit, I believe you're on the West Coast, correct?
San Jose, bright, sunny California. Well, it's an evening time, so it is what it is.
Absolutely. So we will enjoy this nice evening with all of you. We'll just let everyone, I see people coming in. Let's wait for another minute or so until things stabilize, and then we can get going. In the meantime, if you need to grab something to drink, maybe a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And I think Eric is going to entertain you by playing some drums or music in the meantime.
One day I will do that. I always promise to start a webinar with my drum set or guitar, but I never do. Okay. I think we can get started. Yeah. Okay. So let's get started. This is a one-of-a-kind webinar, really interesting. We're partnering here between Votiro and Zscaler to bring to market something really interesting, very impressive. I will tell you all about it. My name is Eric Avigdor. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Votiro. For those who don't know who Votiro is, we are the Zero Trust Content Security company. I'll tell you in a moment all about what we do. Amit, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Eric. Hello, folks. This is Amit Jain, and in my role as a VP of Product Management at Zscaler, I spend major part of my day thinking about how to provide productivity without compromising security, and which is what this partnership is built on. So very much looking forward to presenting the details around this.
And just before we start, just so everyone knows, use the chat on Zoom. We have John and Lawrence from Votiro manning the chat. Any questions you might have throughout the session, feel free to ask questions, make comments, be interactive. Either they will answer it during the session or at the end of the session, if there are any remaining questions, we can answer them as well. So let's get going. Let's start with the fact that for those of you who know Votiro, Votiro is or used to be for many, many years in the content disarm and reconstruction business, what is called CDR, which the intention of CDR is really preventing malware-based attacks. We'll talk in a moment about how. We've found it pretty interesting that our customers have been telling us for a while now that a partnership between Votiro and Zscaler makes a lot of sense, especially because of the browser isolation technology within the ZIA platform, within Zscaler's portfolio, which allows secure browsing in many different scenarios. You come across a situation where content needs to be downloaded through that browser, and there's a lot we can do together. So we'll get there in a moment, but I want to start with the fact that we're going to talk about the malware problem overall, how Votiro and Zscaler deal with that type of problem, how content disarm and reconstructions come into play, and how the technologies together can truly create a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. So let's get going with a few basics. I think one of the most important things that many cybersecurity professionals underestimate is what a critical role files play in every type of cyber kill chain, in every cyber attack. It is usually assumed that roughly 80% of all attacks start with a deployment, with a malware deployed on the endpoint or on a server, which then does a whole lot of damage. And in a moment, we'll go through an example. And one of the things that we've been seeing is that the reason that deploying malware is so easy, the reason that that is used by many hackers is because roughly 2 out of 3 users, so 69% here, but roughly 2 out of 3 users will bypass security features and policies and protocols in a company in order to improve their own productivity. So I'll give you an example of what this means. I'm trying to download a file that I need to do my job, and for some reason my antivirus or whatever technology I'm using is blocking that file. Users are smart. They will find a way around that technology. So the question becomes, how do we allow users' productivity, not impacting the productivity negatively, but still remaining very, very secure, not allowing malware to be deployed within the company? We also know that 2/3 of the attacks, the malware-based attacks, start very simply from either a PDF or an HTML attachment sent over in email. You receive an email. If you're very cyber aware, you would not click on that link or you would not click on that attachment, but most people are not cyber aware. So most users will actually make the mistake and click on that link. And because of that, the question becomes, how do we put in place something that can stop that type of attack? I want to go back to the summer of 2023, last year, and to just walk through an example of something called the Darkgate campaign. Darkgate was a massive campaign that tried to infiltrate into tens of thousands of organizations. And the mechanism that was used was a multifunctional malware. A multifunctional malware is basically a piece of malware that can do many different things. It can harvest credentials. It can deploy ransomware and encrypt the drive or encrypt the data. It can exfiltrate data. It can do many, many different things. And specifically in Darkgate, there were 1,300 variants of malware used in that campaign. Now think about that. 1,300 new types of malware, which are not yet known to the antivirus community. So, point number one, zero-day attacks were used, many of them being totally new. So detection engines were basically almost useless in finding those attacks in the first few weeks of the attack vector. The second interesting thing is that the attack was not only delivered through the normal processes, which is deliver an attachment via an email or deliver a link through a phishing email, and then you go and you download the malware. Some of the attacks were actually done through collaboration tools like Teams or Slack. And the reason for doing that is because the hackers know, just like you do, that most users have been trained to not trust email. But at the same time, when most users see a Teams message or a Slack message, psychologically, they are more trained to trust that message because they think it's coming from an internal participant. So if a external message comes in through Teams prompting you to click on a link, many users will do that. And that's very smart on the hacker side to deliver malware through a Teams message. So again, we're in a situation where malware can be coming in from many different directions. One of them, which the Ukraine Cyber Emergency Response Team is alerting us on, is attachments in SaaS applications, which once again, users don't suspect. Malware comes in, phishing attack starts, malware is deployed, credentials are harvested, it moves laterally, and then it either encrypts something for ransomware or exfiltrates data. So in this type of situation, how do we provide security without impacting productivity? And here's where I want to start by saying the malware problem that we had 20 years ago or 15 years ago or 10 years ago is very, very different than the malware problem today. If up until 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we used to think about the network as that isolated island, which is safe and secure. And if you're in the island, you're safe. And if you're outside of the island, then you're not safe. That is no longer that's no longer the process or the environment we live in. Today, our data is everywhere. Today, our data is in email, in collaboration tools, in cloud storage, in SaaS applications, in data management tools, on web portals. It's everywhere. And we need to make sure that that data everywhere being consumed by our users is always safe. Amit, at this point, I want to hand over to you and ask you quickly, let's talk a little bit about the role that Zscaler plays in keeping users secure when browsing the web. And then we can circle back and talk about the rest of the use cases.
Absolutely, Eric. So at Zscaler, we understand that securing today's cloud and mobile-first enterprise requires a fundamentally different approach and architecture, which is predicated on zero trust. Now, ZIA, Zscaler Internet Access, which is part of the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange, is the world's most deployed security service edge SSE platform, which is built on a decade of secure web gateway leadership. And this platform protects thousands of customers from cyber attacks and data loss by securely connecting users, devices, and applications across any location. Now, as Eric said, files are the lifeline for majority of the organizations, and we have an integrated capability of an AI-powered sandbox that can do a comprehensive analysis and protect your organizations from any file-borne threats coming from web destinations or your customer-facing portals. That AI-based sandbox can do a zero-day threat protection through that thorough analysis and machine learning built into the platform. However, in a bid to improve productivity, you may require access to the content or those files, even though they may have malware, because they might be coming from your end users or partners or customers. So the key question becomes, can you boost productivity without incurring the security risk inherent in those file-borne threats? Next slide. So here comes the cloud browser isolation, which is integral to the zero trust architecture. And the context is that, majority of your workforce is employees who are accessing internet over your managed endpoints through the browser, whereby zero-day threats can creep into your network. And the legacy SWIG's binary approach of either allowing the URL category can compromise security, or on the other hand, if you overblock the content, then it hurts productivity. And this is why we at Zscaler took up the task of subsuming that legacy SWIG pane and make secure browsing invisible through a cloud browser isolation, which is natively integrated into this exchange. And think of this browser isolation as a managed browser built on Chromium, running in the cloud, detonating the web content with any associated zero-day threads, being isolated in that air-gapped container and enforcing controls like clipboard, upload, download, read-only web pages, all while streaming safe pixelated content back to the end user's favorite browser onto your managed endpoint. Next slide. And now, as Eric said, the files are becoming the core way of launching that malware and attack, and we do not want to block that file for productivity reasons. So there are many facets of how you want to enable the access to also the content. Many a times you just want to see the content and not necessarily have access to the file. So we have a built-in document processing technology, which will convert many of those productivity related documents on the fly into a view-only PDF that you can view within the confines of a browser isolation. And even more, if you want to work on such a file, what we allow you is a capability to download a PDF, that converted PDF, which is what's called in the industry parlance as a level 1 CDR. However, we also acknowledge that in many such environments, you may want to retain the original format. You want to retain the full file functionality to be able to work upon such a file, and which is where this Votiro integration comes to fruition with this breakthrough innovation on the level 2 and level 3 CDR. Back to you, Eric, to talk about those details.
So before we, and thanks, Amit, for kind of setting up the scene for what CDR is. So before we talk about how the magic is done, right? And in a moment, I'll share with you kind of that secret sauce, the magic that happens behind the scene. But why do we even need CDR? Amit talked a lot about the fact that we want to preserve the file content. We want to allow productivity. One aspect is when we rely in security on detection, on the ability to detect a known hash or a known behavior, we assume that we can detect a significant number of malware variants, but we know that when a 0-day comes in, it doesn't carry a known signature, it may not carry a known behavior. So we need to have a more sophisticated and a quicker way to disarm a malware variant, even when we don't know that it is actually malicious. And how do we do that? So for that, content disarmament reconstruction was invented many years ago. We actually, Votiro pioneered this over 12, 13 years ago. And what CDR stands for, content disarmament reconstruction, is the ability to crack open a file, remove things from the inside, I'll show you in a moment what, and then rebuild the file. But when CDR started in the market, CDR was mainly all about taking a file, a Word document, a fully functional file, and flattening it basically to an image, either an image or a PDF or whatever it is, and delivering the file to the user so the user can read it, which is good in terms of security. It's not perfect in terms of productivity because maybe that file includes macros that need to be used or active content that is needed within that file, within that PowerPoint or Excel spreadsheet or whatever that is. So the market evolved into what was called CDR level 2, which is let's take a file, let's preserve its original format, let's keep it, if it's an Excel spreadsheet, let's keep it in Excel spreadsheet, but let's disable all of the active content. So now no macros, no scripts, everything was, every live content was removed, but the file format was preserved, and that also was not good enough. Because the users came back saying, no, we want to use these macros. We want the active content. We want the graphics to be functional within the PowerPoints. So what Votiro pioneered at the time was something called content disarmament reconstruction, CDR level 3, which means we can take a file, we can preserve the original content, we can make it safe from 0-day attacks, and we can deliver it in less than 1 second, which means the user never knows that this happens. And if you remember my previous slide, which showed you the solar system or the universe of all of the content, where all of the content comes in from email and collaboration tools and SaaS applications and cloud storage, as the file comes in as an API service, we will disarm that file and deliver it to the user in 0 time. So in a moment, we'll show you how a user downloading content through the Zscaler ZIA environment, that remote browser isolation experience will still be maintained, and the file will come down safely and secure with no 0-day attack on it. So how is the magic done? It all starts with a term we've coined, which is called positive selection, which means that instead of taking the legacy approach of let's detect known bad, everything that is known to be bad, a known signature, a known behavior, maybe if you think about endpoint detection detects a known malicious behavior on the endpoint after the malware has already landed on the endpoint, which is pretty late. Then you need to clean up the endpoint, and why not prevent the problem from coming in the first place? So what content disarm does, as the file is being downloaded or as the file is being opened or brought in through all of these different environments, the first thing we do in the cloud is we crack it open. We open up the file and we basically break it down into all of the different components, like a surgeon which has all of the different organs right in front of them. Now that we have all of that in front of us, and Word documents, PowerPoints, Excel spreadsheets, these are pretty complex documents that include many different internal components, some of which can be very dangerous. There could be binaries or executables inside, or scripts or malicious macros, many different, even steganography, which is an attack that can come in through a weaponized image inside a PowerPoint or inside a PDF. that image could be used as a malware that could then be used in an attack. So we dissect the document, we break it up, and we analyze every one of the components inside. Some of it using some of the interesting techniques that Votiro has deployed within CDR, some of them with AI and machine learning. For example, macros is a great example. We can actually differentiate between malicious macros and benign macros, which are useful. So we carry over only the useful macros and we leave behind everything that is suspicious or malicious. But we also do another interesting thing. Because we have searched and detected for everything that is good, we can leave behind everything that we don't know is good. And everything that we don't know to be good is everything that is suspicious or malicious. And that is left behind, including all of the zero-day attacks. Once we do that, we reconstruct the file based on its original format into a clean template and deliver it to the user. And all of this happens in real time, in less than 1 second for the average business document, and the user never knows that this happened behind the scene. And the content is delivered, the content is safe and can be used by the user. Okay. At the same time, when this file is being delivered, I've just mentioned that we crack open the file and we look at all of the good content inside. So you would ask me, just like many customers asked, if we're looking at the known good, leaving behind the known bad, why not analyze the known good and search for maybe private information or sensitive information like PII or PCI or PHI or credentials, and tell us what you found. And we can do that too. So once the file is cracked open, we are now also employing techniques that are now called data detection and response, which are, we can look at the data, we can find it, and together with this great partnership with Zscaler, we can actually act both on preventing malware and on preventing compliance risks and privacy risks and data exfiltration, looking both at the malware front and at the sensitive data side. Now, Amit mentioned a few moments ago zero trust. And it's really important for me to make a really, really, really important point. We all grew up many years in the cybersecurity space learning what zero trust meant 20 years ago. It was very focused on the castle and moat approach, where the network is on an island and you have a bridge going over the island, and that bridge is the VPN. And if you come in through the VPN, you're good, you're trusted, and you can do everything, which is a really bad idea. So the first few years we focused on zero trust, meaning no, we don't trust everyone. We actually don't trust anyone. And we need to apply zero trust principles on people, on identities. What we're doing here with this partnership is we're applying zero trust even in a more granular way to data. Instead of looking at only from an identity view, we're looking at it down at the data perimeter, making sure that we do not trust any content, and we make sure that every content is inspected and made safe. Basically, what this does is, beyond preventing the malware we know of and the malware we don't know, which is zero-day attacks, now that hackers, just like legitimate enterprises, also hackers are using AI to create new variants of malware, and thousands over thousands of new variants of malware. Malware is evolving very fast. And because of that, content disarm is a really, really good application or a really good technique to deny AI-based malware from coming into your environment. Amit, when we think about how Zscaler protects the user from a browser isolation standpoint and CDR, tell us a little bit about how the story comes together. What can our customers expect us to do for them?
The beautiful partnerships are which are invisible, makes the things work, focuses on the outcome, and then have a necessary plumbing to make it really transparent, both from operational perspective and also from an end user perspective. So think about a workflow where the user is coming on their managed laptop, cell phone, or a tablet, fire up their favorite browser, going to a website to browse the internet content, and then try to access a file. And guess what? The file has malware. It has a zero-day threat, so it will be stopped in its track in the zero trust exchange as it should. However, to enable the productivity, we would be able to send that file via API to Votiro, and then it will be able to do a content disarm and reconstruct that file. So essentially, you will get three options in the cloud browser. You can view the content within the confines of the cloud browser isolation, because you don't need access to the file, you just need access to the content. So you can do that view only option within the browser. Second option that you get is download that flattened file, sanitized file as level 1 CDR. So you just want to download that document as a PDF. And the third option is, as Eric was highlighting, which is built on that positive reselection. You get that full file functionality intact, and you would be able to download the original format file as a sanitized file. So that's the primary use case. On the other hand, we are also able to use this partnership for data protection use case. And let me talk about that, because let's say your managed endpoints, employees on those managed endpoints are trying to upload a file to a portal, rightfully so. And to even your application, it may contain some malware that's present on your endpoint. So we will stop that in the tracks as well, and we would sanitize that file to make sure that any such content that's uploaded to your apps remain malware free. And in fact, the data protection element comes from the fact is that we have seen the steganography attacks are on the rise, where people intentionally or unintentionally, because of the malware, are able to exfiltrate the data by hiding sensitive content in, let's say, an image file or a QR code, and so on and so forth. With this integration, we stop that in the tracks as well and make sure that any such content remains within the confines of your organization.
And I love the point you made, Amit, about many people think about CDR as a technology for looking at files coming into the organization. I've been hearing a lot lately about also using CDR. Many of our customers use CDR outbound because your company doesn't want to be at fault for infecting your partners or suppliers with malware that is being pushed out into your partners and suppliers. And at the same time, you also want to put controls, that DLP type control, on not losing data that could be exfiltrated or mistakenly even sent outbound. So with that, we'd like to show you a quick demo. It's actually very, very quick. It's very short, kind of showing you what the user experience is all about. So once you've set up the integration, and the integration, obviously, you'd be setting that up within the Zscaler environment. It points to Votiro. The files that are being downloaded will be sent to Votiro, scanned, sanitized, and provided to the user. And if I click play here, you can see what this looks like. So you can see a user here who is trying to download a specific file. So they click on the download button. Zscaler immediately comes in, gives you a note that this is sent to content disarm, and says, hey, if you want to download that file, go to your secure storage, where that protected storage will contain your file, where you can download that file from it. It has already been sanitized, as you saw, and that file has now been downloaded onto the endpoint. So once again, there's nothing special about the about the user experience here. The user is already very familiar with the technicalities of how to click on the download button. The Zscaler pop-up comes up, they hit download from the protected storage, and the file comes down. There's nothing new they need to learn, no new process, no new documentation or anything like that. We can move on. So we've told you about the user experience, but there's a second and very important aspect about this integration. One of the things that we do at Votiro is, instead of only doing that CDR magic behind the scenes, sanitizing the file, making it safe, and delivering it, which is great, that all of that is good, we also now tell you what we found. So once we've cracked open that file into the tens or sometimes hundreds of elements inside, and we've analyzed all of them, and we've removed what we don't know. We will provide you through the Votiro platform a lot of analytics of what was found, what was benign, what was suspicious, what was found to be malicious, and we'll give you the context of where it came from and where it went. Did it come in through email or through a browser download, through Zscaler, through a collaboration tool? Who is the user that is receiving that content or uploading that content? All of that information can be used for threat hunting, for basically remediating an attack if you need to do that. With CDR, really, there's not much remediation because the remediation happens on the fly. But the analytics are pretty important for you to know that this is happening, that someone is trying to attack your CFO by sending malware to your CFO. So now you can remediate by alerting your CFO, mainly for awareness purposes. I think with that, we're coming close to the end of the webinar. I'd like to summarize kind of the benefits and the value adds of using both Zscaler ZIA with RBI together with Votiro. So I'll let you go first, Amit. What this is all about.
No, thanks, Eric. And I think first and foremost, as we talked about zero trust, the aspects of that architecture and the platform is fundamentally important. And then with this browser isolation, you are free to do secure browsing, which is invisible because you can do that from the browser of your choice on your managed endpoint. It seamlessly integrates into the cloud browser isolation. And with this architecture that we have with Votiro, that is able to enable the productivity because we can detect the true type of files and perform the actions accordingly. There could be a weaponized file with misleading file type extensions, which are automatically blocked. The file structure would be analyzed for any hidden file objects, and even the file content will be checked for any use key URLs. And then that active content may contain VBA macros, which are analyzed and ruled out based on a machine learning trained algorithm. And so even based on the security policies, the metadata can be discarded or preserved for security and audit requirements. And more importantly, increasingly archives or password protected or zip files are being seen in the network. So they can be extracted, processed recursively for any embedded objects in the documents, which are also handled as well, thus preserving the end user experience while protecting from file-borne threats.
That's perfect. And I'd like to add, you mentioned, and it's actually a really important point. When we think about malware coming in, there could be a file coming in with active content on it. It also could be a URL, right? Because sometimes through a phishing attack, you receive a URL either in a doc or in your email, as you mentioned, and that URL can point to a malicious domain from which the malware will be downloaded, right? That's an easy technique to bypass many different mechanisms that are put in place. Sometimes there's even a double hop where a URL will download a malware, which will then go to another malicious domain and download another malware. Sometimes even a file or an email will contain a QR code, or a document will contain a QR code that once you either click or scan it with your phone would then point you to a malicious domain. So content disarm really deals with all of the above. Is this file truly what it says it is? If it says it's a PDF, is it really a PDF? Or is it an executable? Or is it a binary, right? Remove all of the threats, remove URLs, remove malicious macros. So all of that is in place in order to ensure that users will receive the content in real time and it will be safe. We've all been in cybersecurity for a long time. We never say 100% safe, but this is as close as possible as it gets to 100% safe. Malware prevention is one thing, data exfiltration is another thing this capability is great for, but all in all, what this does is instead of moving, it moves us. What it does is really, it helps us shift left. Instead of detecting the problem and remediating it after the mess happens, we're starting earlier on and preventing the problem from happening in the first place. So I'll look at the chat to see if we have any open questions. Okay, so the first one is, and I mean, maybe this, I'll point this one to you. How easy is it to deploy this integration? I mean, is this something that takes weeks or days, or what? How long does it take to deploy this?
I will say it's a day one configuration, because as I mentioned earlier, that it's very built. The plumbing is already built in the back end very seamlessly. For existing Zscaler customers, you already have a Zscaler client connector deployed, which points the traffic to the Zero Trust Exchange. And I said, browser isolation is natively integrated coming from Zscaler, and with this Votiro integration, that also is embedded seamlessly into these things. And as Eric mentioned earlier, that for threat hunting and other kind of analysis, you may need to go to the Votiro interface to be able to configure those two things. But it's very straightforward, as you can see from that video that Eric showed up earlier.
There's a question, thanks Amit about that. There's another question about the efficacy of CDR level 3. Efficacy is measured very differently when you talk about technologies like content disarm versus detection-based tools. So really in CDR, false positives are extremely rare. It's mainly when you actually detect something that is benign, mistakenly you actually remove it, even though it is not malicious. That happens extremely rarely. We see maybe 2 or 3 cases over an entire year where billions of files are processed every year. So it is an extremely rare case to have a false positive on CDR. Another question that came up is the difference between the CDR approach versus a sandbox approach. Do you want to mention something about that?
So no, I think as I was alluding to earlier, that Sandbox is a great technology and protects any zero-day threats, any malware from going into your network, and providing deeper analysis for you for threat hunting, for SOC analyzing, like why this file was even in your network in the first place. But at the same time, we want to also think about enabling productivity, which is why we are taking a step further with this integration with Votiro, where we are saying that, hey, we know that the file is bad, it has some malware, but you do need to function on that file. You do need productivity to continue. And this is where that disarm and reconstruction comes into the play, where you can either view the content, you can have level 1 CDR, download it as a converted PDF, or retain the full file functionality and go bonkers with your productivity.
I love that. I just saw another question pop up. May I understand if Votiro CDR is only available via Zscaler RBI? So no, Votiro CDR is a platform that allows you, it's an open API platform that allows you to integrate with anywhere where files move. Email attachments, Teams messages, Slack messages, cloud storage, OneDrive, SharePoint, on-prem storage, SFTP, file transfers, anywhere where files move, right? So SaaS applications, web portals, maybe third-party facing web portals, anywhere where files move, Votiro can grab the file, sanitize it in real time, and deliver it. So if you want to think about your email attachment, the email comes in, Votiro sanitizes the document and delivers it in the inbox for the user, so they can safely use the files and once again in real time.
One other question that came from Nicholas was about the RBI technology that we use. And that's very interesting and very important question, because it's all about end user experience, And for the longest period of time, the Zscaler RBI was using pixel streaming, because we fundamentally believe in not compromising security. And this is the most secure way of streaming the things, but we also acknowledge that it's not the most optimal in terms of the experience when you are browsing content, you are watching a YouTube video or any training material. And so that's why we have invested into an R&D, and we are in the LA phase of this technology, which is built on WebGL. This is how multiplayer gaming happens on the internet, and this is how we are able to provide you a near native experience. Very fundamentally important to our strategy of providing a secure browsing which is invisible to your environment.
Yeah, and I mean, just, the question that came up now was, am I right to say that Votiro CDR can be integrated with Zscaler ZIA? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. And I think those are all the questions I saw. I want to say thank you all for joining, and thank you, Amit, for being a great partner. And I once again want to remind everyone, this is all about safe web browsing, right? Web browsing is risky. We make it safe together. So if you want to know more, I will just click here. There you go. If you want to know more, you can reach out to us for a one-on-one discovery session. Write to info@votiro.com. We will connect with you, and we will pull in Amit and the Zscaler team as well, and we can help you with your secure web journey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.